see, what else do we got from the live chat? We've had a lot of questions. We talk a lot about flight. How are you guys feeling about driving? Any tech you're working on for ground vehicles?
At the moment, no. It's something that I actually would love to work on one day, but the fact is it works reasonably well and there's no problems with it. And so, at least in the near future, there's
no problems.
It works well enough.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Whoa, 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 whoa. Yes.
Evo, don't order a ship.
No, it was a ground vehicle. I saw them on these.
Jesus Christ, do not. Ooh.
Don't go ahead. Tell us how there's no problems with it. Go ahead.
All right, fine. There are some problems.
All right, so I know what you're gonna say, and then, yeah, I mean, I just thought that comment was absolutely hilarious. It was, yeah, not a great thing to say, given recent events. But I do understand that their focus is primarily on space vehicles right now, and they did address a number of issues, not being able to spawn both a ground vehicle and a space vehicle, and that is something that in the future is going to be rectified. That is not permanent. That's kind of a performance thing. You know, they gave the example of somebody going to Olisar and literally pulling out all their ships and bogging down the servers, so I get it. I understand. It's an inconvenience. It's a bit of a pain in the ass, but you know, such is the nature of early access gaming. Beyond that, though, CIG did talk about one very interesting thing. One thing that I found very, very particularly interesting was they talked about, I guess, some form of AR or radar-like display that would show you the ground underneath your ship when you're trying to land your ship. And it's such an amazing idea, such a great idea. It's something that I'm glad that they're experimenting with, talking about, and this is kind of the direction that they're heading in. I think it's something that fits well within the context of the universe, and also because I suggested it like a year ago. So, you know, don't care, just what's best for the game, and honestly, that isn't a great idea. I hope they pull it off. I hope it's amazing. I realize it can't be just like the Elite Dangerous system, because, you know, obviously you have kind of fixed assets within Elite Dangerous, whereas here you'd be landing on, you know, a moon which can have a multitude of varied surfaces, so they have to create something that kind of reads the terrain down below. This is obviously not something that's going to, you know, be manufactured overnight. It is something that's direly needed, but you know, we can navigate in the third person, which technically we're not really supposed to be doing in a first person game, but you know, as long as they're working on it and as long as we now have some direction on this thing and, you know, some idea that, you know, no, we acknowledge the problem and this is one of the solutions that we're thinking of, it's great. It's fantastic. And I was so happy to hear this. You know, so that was pretty cool, and I thought that, you know, maybe it's gonna end there, but, and this is where we get to the ship update part, it's getting very, very interesting for the Vanguard. Very interesting indeed. Now, the Vanguard, if you remember, initially was offered with two variants, the Vanguard Harbinger and the Vanguard Sentinel. And the Warden was the one that immediately made it to flight ready, and the next one to arrive as flight ready was the Hoplite, though the Hoplite at the time was something of an anomaly within the Vanguard line because of the unique proportions that were used to create the interior for the Hoplite, which is the troop dropship. It didn't conform to the drop-in, drop-out component system of the original three Vanguards. One of the unique features of the original three Vanguards was the fact that any one of the original three Vanguards could become the other one. Whereas you might only own a Vanguard Warden, which is the base model, the long-distance fighter version, you could upgrade it through the swapping of modules and the little command pod to become a Vanguard Harbinger or a Vanguard Sentinel. And the Sentinel was the one that I was the most interested in, because that was the E-War one. And that, coupled with the long range, pretty attractive ship. But because the Harbinger differed in terms of its internal structure, it couldn't conform to those plans. So the battlefield upgrade kits that you were able to purchase with the initial sale of these ships wouldn't work on a Vanguard hoplite. Well, apparently that is no longer the case. The Vanguard hoplite has joined its, brethren or its sisters, however you view it, and has become interchangeable with the other ships. So that new redesigned interior that all the Vanguards have gotten is now a universal feature. You can turn a hoplite into a Harbinger. You can turn a Harbinger into a Sentinel. You can turn a Sentinel into a Warden, or vice versa. You can turn any one of them to the other one. And the battlefield upgrade kits are now strictly basically packages of components that allow you to swap in and out depending on what kind of functionality you want. And so that was some pretty damned good news, especially for those of you out there who own the hoplite. Well, now it can become the fighter or the Sentinel or the bomber. Now, as if that wasn't enough good news, one of the other sticking points on the Vanguard has always been its nose cannons. Players, myself included, have always despised the fact that they were kind of a variant of the M4A, I believe, the M4A size 2 laser, and that they couldn't be changed. Well, apparently in the future, even though they are going to have to be bespoke components for the Vanguard, so it may not have the entire pantheon of guns available, these guns are apparently going to be changeable to other forms like repeaters and whatnot. So that is a whole lot of good news for Vanguard owners, and that's something that we've been dying for a long time. And as someone who is a former owner of a Vanguard on multiple occasions, somebody who originally bought it when the first sale came out and have the buyback token, this has become a very, very interesting fighter, because once again, this is a fighter that no longer suffers or doesn't really suffer to such an extent the overheating and fuel drawbacks that the other fighters do, making this a fighter that still maintains a higher level of mobility throughout a star system, whereas other fighters have that mobility, but it's somewhat problematic and inconvenient, whereas the Vanguard can just drift across space wherever it seems to want to go within a star system. Added to that, all the new features that we're seeing within the Vanguard in terms of armor storage, gun storage, not exactly a discrete cargo space, but definitely space within the ship to place cargo crates on the floor, though they will not be, secured. I mean, it has become kind of a total package ship. It has kind of, with all of these changes once again that have been recommended multiple times, it really has kind of, I think, matured as a ship, and it really is starting to show its strength. So it was a lot of good news. And then they added one more piece. In the initial models that we were shown in the animations of the Vanguard, when the Vanguard first came out on sale, the top turret would fold up and would retract within the body of the ship. Now, later on, as the ship became flight ready, we were told that that was impossible, that wasn't something that CIG could do, and that, along with the internalized missiles, was no longer a thing that was going to be on the Vanguard. And a lot of owners were understandably dismayed by this. But like the internalized missiles, it seems that is now back on the table, though they did say that it doesn't function at the moment, but the space within the ship to make that happen is there now. And so it's something that will be implemented further down the road, but it is now possible to stow the turret of the Vanguard within the Vanguard, much like the original concept. So, wow. Amazing. I think that overall, I mean, we're in a much better place. These ships, I think, reflect the realities of Star Citizen far better than they did in their original versions. I don't think anyone would actually prefer the older version to the new. This is something that's far closer to the concept. And a lot of this, you know, was based on player feedback. A lot of this feedback came back in the very early days of the ship from when it became flight ready. And some of these were concerns that were even aired during the concepting of the ship. And as features were cut and things were trimmed down a little bit, especially the retracting turret and the internalized missiles, players were vocal about that and said, you know, hey, I think that's something that really belongs back into the ship. And it's nice to see that CIG is kind of embracing this feedback, and not only that, acting on it. And this is the result. And, you know, it is, I would argue, a very positive result. And not just for the ship owners, but I think also for CIG as well, because previously, you know, the reply to feedback like this was,
Deny till you die, pal.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.